Hey there! Before we get into the thick of this long-ass video, I just wanted to say thank you to all my subscribers, both new and old. We just recently reached over 2,000 subs and I cannot wait to share with you all my future plans for this channel. I also want to apologize for the long wait over this video, and if it happens to go up and off the channel once or twice before this whole thing is said and done. See, I would have had this video out over a month ago if it weren't for the fact that I had to clip this 2-hour-long movie up into 2 to 3 second clips, edit the shit out of those same clips, and do that for what was amounted to about an hour-and-a-half long video. So that Screenwave Media, the people who own the AVGN series, and also write nearly all the new episodes of the AVGN series by the way, don't immediately block this video. I don't even care if they just took the ad revenue. God knows they already did that with both of the other AVGN videos, which I didn't even mind because I wanted to make those and they were fun to do. But to block entirely if there's any footage of the AVGN movie shown is pretty extreme. For a company that depends on the use of copyrighted material for all their content, that sure is hypocritical. So if you happen to see weird edits or strange images come across the screen of this video, just know that that is me fighting to even have this video available to watch at all at this point. And I'm not gonna lie guys, this one really burnt me out. I procrastinated editing this video because of all the daunting task it was to edit, as well as try to fight it to keep it on YouTube really was for me. But with that said, I really hope that you do enjoy all the bullshit that I put up to finally get this video out and available for you all to see. And just know that if this video gets taken down for any reason, you now know the reason why. It was because Screenwave Media were being greedy and decided to immediately block the video because they happened to pick up on one of the couple seconds of footage that are in the video. But rant over. I just wanted to share with you guys why this has taken so long and kind of give you a behind the scenes, I guess, perspective on making it. So with that said, take a seat, relax. This one's going to be a long one. See you later.
Hello, this is James from Cinemassacre coming to you with a special message. Basically, since I've been doing one Angry Video Game Nerd episode a month as opposed to 2, which was insane by the way, you know, there's a lot of word going around that I'm slowing down. I'm gonna retire the nerd soon. I'm walking away. This is the script to the Angry Video Game Nerd movie.
September 24th, 2010. The day James Rolfe announced his plans to make an Angry Video Game Nerd movie to the public. Coming hot off the start of the 5th season of his nominal show at this point, this announcement was welcomed by many as something truly special. This online show that had garnered so many fans would be getting a big movie. I'll always remember the conversations me and my brother would have about the possibilities that this could ensue. What would the movie be about? Who would be the main villain? Would all the enemies that the nerd fought before come back? Would the nostalgia critic come back in some sort of major way? What about Captain S?
Every good level has its boss fight, an enemy that trumps all other piddly lackeys encountered along the way. If Bromley High were a Genesis game, Mr. Blakemore would be the deceptive, clever boss who catches our hero off guard and then introduces a 4-foot-long katana to his dome while tying his shoe. He's such a jerk.
Okay, maybe not Captain S. But regardless, this seemed like one of the best ideas ever to 2010 me, along with many other fans who had followed every project by James up to this point. Of course, the idea of a random YouTuber or online personality getting a movie nowadays is an idea that has long lost its luster, with shitty cash grab after vanity project after terribly written hot trash after the other. As it turns out, online content creation doesn't always, or mostly ever, translates well into a movie format. It's not even for lack of skill all the time either, though it certainly can be. Just more often than not, what works on an online free video format just doesn't often translate well onto film. They speak the same language, but they know little of each other's vocabulary. With that said, though, where does this leave the AVGN movie? Well, before we get into the meat and cheese of this proverbial sandwich, I'd first like to go through the development of this film, the lead up to its big release, as not only does it give a good idea of the minds and ideas behind the film's inception and creation, but also to best emulate what it was like as an AVGN fan at the time, desperately waiting for this film's big release. With that said, get a snack or two, maybe something hot to drink and settle in, and let's go back to the past. So, James had just announced his aspiration to make an AVGN film, one that according to him has been an idea in his head for a little while now. We also get a bit of a behind the scenes peek of what the movie is going to be about, James likening it to Rocky or Wayne's World in that it's a movie about game reviews, but the whole movie won't be an actual game review. What's interesting is what he says about the movie, and if not his ultimate, certainly one of his most important goals in making this film.
Now the big question I think is, where will this be seen? And, will it be in theaters? I don't know yet, but best situation, yes, it will be in theaters worldwide. Worst situation, it'll just play at some, film festivals, have an independent run, and, select theaters, or, and it'll go on DVD eventually, so either way, you're going to see it, but it's really early to know exactly what's going to happen, and I hope that it opens up a lot of doors, and then after this I'll be able to make all kinds of movies, because there's like just a huge backlog in my head of like all these movies I want to make.
Things would go quiet for a while about the Nerd Movie as more episodes of the series was released on a monthly basis up until June 1st of 2011, when James would make an update to the progress of the film. He goes on to talk about how the movie is in pre-production, getting actors, sets, and the like in some fashion set up, as well as trying to figure out the budget for this film, if it will be completely independent or if any movie companies are interested in the movie's pitch. He also gives out several email addresses to anyone looking to be a part of the cast, representation, or just general help in some distinct way for the movie. James also outlines when this whole movie script was made, the idea starting all the way back in 2006 during the series' basic primordial soup phase, the rough outline being made during the start of the golden age of the series, and the script being finished by 2008. What's also important to this video that I feel is disheartening a bit is what James says about the series and when he plans on making more episodes.
Now, of course, we got to talk about the episodes too, the nerd episodes. That's the other question, is like, when is the nerd coming back or whatever? Well, to begin with, I'm really surprised that this has gone on as long as it did. Originally, the first two episodes were made in 2004. They only existed on VHS tapes. Pretty much at the advent of YouTube in 2006 was when like the nerd started getting popular, and I made the third episode, which was Karate Kid. So the first three episodes was a trilogy, and that was it. That was meant to be it. And then I got talked into doing a fourth one because people liked them a lot, which was cool. So I did a fourth one and left it at that. The last one was Roger Rabbit, and then kept going. Then I was like, okay, fine. So I did Ninja Turtles, and whoa, it blew up. And then I made 100 episodes. So how about that? 100 episodes, 101 actually. So as that went on, it got harder and harder to like, keep them fresh. Like, how many times can I say shitload of fuck over and over again? So I did what I could and I kept going, and I'm really proud of it, honestly. I'm really happy how it went. I never knew I would have made 101 episodes. So I was pretty much happy to stop there, but I realized there's still a high demand, and I need to start on the movie. I can't do both. If I keep doing the episodes, I'll never get to do the movie. But with that said, guess what? I'm doing both. Yes, I am going to continue the nerd episodes. Now, here's the deal. They're not going to be like, they're going to be efficient. They're going to be basic. I'm going to try and knock them out as quick as possible, so they might not be as good. I'm just going to do the best I can, but the idea is that I think any nerd episodes are probably better than none at all. So basically, it's going to be some shittier episodes or none whatsoever. So I'm going to go with making them. So we're going to start up again.
While this simple comment may seem like nothing, it is interesting to note how honest it really is. James is surprised people are still watching this series. He's surprised he was able to keep it fresh after all this time. While it seems fairly mundane, I would put this video in your nerd feathercaps, as its tone becomes much more ominous as time goes on. Regardless though, James would only produce 5 episodes that season, season 6 being the shortest season to date besides season 10, which also only had 5 episodes. The movie was James' utmost important project, and no doubt after the next few updates to come would understandably take his center focus. October 16th, 2011, James has now officially launched the AVGN Movie Indiegogo promo and fundraising campaign. Besides once again announcing the film, James also notes what to expect out of the movie in relation to the nerd episodes. That being something akin to the Nintendo World Championship and the Rob the Robot episodes. Then, on November 11th, 2011, James would release a huge thank you video for them raising over $100,000 by that time, with 86 days left to go on the campaign. With the funds raised and James and his team now fully able to go independent, giving James complete creative control, not to mention the final donation numbers coming in at around $325,000, things were looking promising. Filming officially began in California on April 1st of 2012 and wrapped up on May 11th of 2012. During this time, James was using online articles, videos, and really any way he could to keep everyone updated on the filming and progress of the movie. On May 25th, 2012, James would make an announcement video after coming back to his home after his long trip in filming in Hollywood. James would take the time to reflect on the film-making process and even give advice to up-and-coming or wannabe indie filmmakers and tells them what he's learned after this whole process. He also notes how hard it is to set things up to film in LA.
Number 5, filming in LA, it's kind of, in a way it was magical, it was kind of like a dream to be shooting a movie in Hollywood, because as a kid I always thought, yeah, Hollywood, I'll never go there, but you're surrounded by film history, the weather is usually more consistent, and you have the deserts, you have all the different landscapes and all these locations that you need, which is the reason it's so appealing to, it's why the whole film industry is out there. But then the bad side is that it's just so expensive. And I keep saying that, like, oh, LA is expensive, but it's like they make it as expensive as they possibly can. They want your money. They want as much money from you as they can. So there's a very greedy business side to the whole thing, And if I were to do, it again, well, I wouldn't change anything because I learned so much about the way things are done in LA. But the next film, anywhere else is cheaper. It's gotta be. It's ridiculous. I'm not saying not to shoot in LA, but just do a lot of research before, because I didn't do enough research. Like, you want to film a tree, you gotta get a permit from the fucking squirrel that lives in it.
He also updates the general progress of the film, with what he calls the hardest work out of the way, and now editing, green screen shots, CGI, and fixing shit up, as well as scoring the film and etc. needing to be done going forward. He also notes how he hopes the film will be done by Christmas that year, but would say it's safe to say that it will be done within 1 year. This would not happen at all. During this time frame, James would frequently post update videos on his progress of the movie, something that I remember feeling extremely inspired by. I mean, after all, James' series was something that I had more than cherished for years by this point, and seeing him go through so much hard work to get this film made, while still making and releasing AVGN episodes, that while yes, were more infrequent, were still damn good episodes, and kept up the Monster Madness thing every year, as best as he could anyway, as well as making a brand new series called Board James, a series where James and his friends play and review board games, and eventually it develops a darker narrative as the series goes on, was something to fucking behold. Oh, and to top everything off, James had just had his first child born this year, so on top of everything else, he was also a new father trying to take care of his baby. By November 10th of 2012, James would have his first trailer publicly available for everyone to see online, which gave people a look at what the film would be about. The plot would focus on the infamous Atari ET game, and the once urban legend now proven fact story about Atari tossing thousands of the games in a landfill to try to get rid of all the excess of games, the game often being associated with the great video game crash of 1983. The trailer looked promising. Ignorance is bliss, I suppose, and I will say I remember getting pretty fucking excited for this movie when the trailer came out back then, it finally being some actual evidence of the film being somewhere close to release. By September 2013, James would have an update that gave people much more information, and was honestly very candid, as the film was now taking way longer than he had expected, which seemed to be taking a slight toll on him as he had so much to manage, and coined a term he calls creative constipation.
When's the movie going to get done? That's the big question, is it's like, I love when people ask it. I love that everybody's enthused about it, because everybody's really nice. Nobody's like, what the fuck are you doing? Why is it taking so long? It's not like that. People are really nice that they're looking forward to it. But to me, it's just like, there's no way to know. I said December 2012 in time for the 30th anniversary. Oops. Then I said summer 2013. Oops again. So I'm not going to jinx myself. There's just no way to predict it. As it gets closer and closer, it'll start getting easier to predict. I want the movie done. I just want everybody to know that. I want it done. Like, anybody who wants it done, I want it done 1,000 times more. My wife wants it done. We want it done. So trust me, I can't wait. For obvious reasons. Like, I have, more than enough things on my plate. I have the baby, I have the videos on the site, then on top of all that, a feature film. So it's a lot to manage. And I put it all on myself. Like, I decided to do this, and here I am, trying to finish it years later. I couldn't even predict that it was going to take this long. And I have newfound wisdom. Like, I learned more about filmmaking on this film than I ever did, and I just can't wait to apply that newfound wisdom on the next film, because that's what I want to do. I want to make more movies, and that's another thing, is that there's this thing I call creative constipation. When you have ideas keep on coming to you, but you're still working on the same idea from years ago. This movie represents who I was in 2007. This is an idea that was in my head back then. And since then, there have been lots of ideas that I've had to dismiss because I need to finish this first. Of course, there's the pressure of knowing, you know, everybody's waiting and everything. And when I was making the movie, I'm like, you know, when we're shooting and things were going wrong, it's like, fuck, you know, this is the AVGN movie. Like, I have a responsibility for this. Like, I want this to live up to everything. And, you know, and now most of all, now on a more positive level, it's like, I just want people to see it because it's coming out great.
Which is something that I can personally attest to. While I may not be a big content creator by any means, I am always thinking of new video ideas, new creative outlets, ideas for my book series, stuff I could live stream, and sometimes I just get lost in the weeds of this creativity that is going nowhere because it's all just ideas, no actual content. James' comments about wanting to live up to people's expectations and trying to deliver this film to everyone who is desperate to see it is also a bit heartbreaking given what would soon follow. Skipping ahead to June 13th of 2014, a lot had changed by this point. For instance, James was no longer a part of Screw Attack. To be fair, no one was really by this point either, but he had also gone fully to uploading all his episodes of the series to YouTube and Cinemassacre first. Hell, the landscape of YouTube by this point had changed, with many content creators who had been first inspired by James now going on to be big successes in their own right. But amidst all this, James finally had a real big update for his film.
Angry Video Game Nerd, the movie, will premiere on July 21st, 2014 in Hollywood at the famous Grauman's Egyptian Theater. Yeah.
James would go on to inform everyone where the film would be shown, going on tour, as well as give the live Q&As to any one of the screenings that he attends. Before this video, on April 3rd, James had also made an inside look with some real concrete promises and really building up the film as something that was the culmination of a lot of passion, hard work, lifelong friends, and ultimately giving a more detailed description about what the movie would entail. He also goes on to talk about the filming process, how the special effects were done, with much of it being practical. Most importantly, James gives a final and hopeful message about having finished this passion project through fan support and pure talent and obsession alone, as well as what it might do to the film industry.
Obviously, producing a feature film on this scale is a lot more work than making an episode all by myself in my basement. The internet is all about quick entertainment and fast delivery, but this project is a much bigger beast.
It's been such a fun movie to shoot. I mean, we've had a little bit of everything on this set, from zombies to explosions to aliens, everything.
But I remember sitting with a lot of actors for those like coffee meetings, and they would read the script, and inevitably it came up with, how are you gonna do this? And they were like, I don't even care. You can bring me on as an extra. I just want to see how you even try to make this happen.
Yeah. 3 brand new idiots are gonna make this movie?
The mainstream film industry is like a monopoly with the giant media conglomerates controlling everything. But I hope when this film comes out, it will help pave the way for young independent filmmakers to get their chances to pursue their dreams. That's the bigger goal here, and I think everybody who makes movies in this internet day and age are all playing a part in revolutionizing how movies are made. That's what Cinemassacre is all about.
With all that said, James' passion project, the AVGN Movie, would finally premiere on July 21st, 2014 at the Grauman's Egyptian Theater in Hollywood and be shown off all over the States till September 2nd, 2014, when the film was released via video on demand for all fans to finally see. So with all this build-up, I'll never forget when me and my brother finally, after waiting 4 long years for this day to come, we sat down and finally watched the movie. But before I get into what I thought of the movie back then, I think it's time we stop with this prologue, this long diatribe, and get into breaking down what the final result of James' hard work really was. What are the contents of the AVGN Movie, and why is it so infamous? The movie opens with a brief history of Atari, the E.T. Atari game, and the video game crash of 1983. The art style and the way the story is told here is nice, establishing an interesting tone from the start. That is immediately cut off at the head with the presentation that is revealed to be a pitch from an employee at Cockburn Inc. Their pitch is to make E.T. 2. This businesswoman believes that if they make a sequel to one of the worst games of all time, and make it even worse, it will sell like hotcakes. As she notes that gamers lately have been playing games that they hate, rather than what they love. When she's asked why they're playing awful games, she attributes all the blame to the AVGN. We're going to come back to this later in more detail, but suffice to say, this is a rather confusing setup. Anyway, we then open into what is actually one of the best parts of the film, the introduction to the nerd, with him waking up and getting ready for his day, similar to how he might in his videos. A really great rendition of the AVGN theme song accompanying it all. After that, we get a sort of mock-up compilation of clips that are reacted lines from previous AVGN reviews, hosted up on youpoop.com, with extremely fake and cringy reactions to the fake videos.
Go out in a thunderstorm and try to dodge rain. Like, what were they thinking? In other words, it's pretty hard. They just want to cover up the truth with their awesome cover that makes the game look great when really it just rips kids off their hard-earned allowance money. It would be easier to pick fly shit out of pepper while wearing boxing gloves.
Love the nerd.
I get that the purpose is to, number one, establish the nerd as a popular figure, and number two, get some of his fans into the movie as well, but I think the fake and forced reactions / plain bad acting makes it feel very off. Although to be honest, even James feels very off here during this section.
Balls! It's a catastrophe of ass!
And I know this might seem like nitpicking, but I assure you, these nitpicks are picking at a gaping hole in this movie conceptually. That being that the nerd within this movie's universe is a very popular internet figure. Not too far off from reality, right? Well, except that the nerd is so popular in this movie's universe that damn near every single person he meets immediately knows who he is. Companies are trying to get him to endorse games so that they will sell better. Everywhere this guy goes, a cabal of loyal and loving fans are at his side. Even the villains, as we will see later, fucking love the guy. It starts to feel a bit self-masturbatory after a while, an issue that plagues many YouTuber movies. The movie is meta in the sense that we, as the audience, are no longer being talked to directly from the nerd. In every single video up to this point, the nerd always talks to the camera being you, us, if you were there in the room as he showed you all of this shit. Now, we as the audience always hide behind the fourth wall of this film. This isn't inherently bad by any means, but it does take away from the charm that the character has, now replaced with this faux meta-universe where the nerd is no longer a character being played by James, but is an actual person who makes YouTube videos and is popular to near a celebrity status. Are you seeing a bit of a confusing concept yet? Well, let's make it a bit more confusing with the character of Cooper. Cooper is helping the nerd film his latest video, which seems to annoy the nerd a bit as he notes that he is usually making these videos all by himself. We then suddenly cut to the two inside the car driving to work. On the way, the nerd has a discussion with Cooper about the unique sacrifices he needs to enact upon himself to be a true nerd like himself. The most important of which being no girls.
No girls. Nerds before birds.
I honestly feel like that whole scene was set up for that one dumb fucking joke. It does call into question, why does Cooper want to be like the nerd? Why is the nerd helping Cooper to be more like him? Why is the nerd being, well, for lack of a better term, nice. The nerd is always a pissy, violent, or at least dismissive of any person or character he meets up with in his videos, besides maybe Spider-Man, which, by the way, now begs the question, in the nerd canon of this movie, do characters like Bugs Bunny and Spider-Man really exist? Or are they really just part of the act as well? What about the special effects and monsters that the nerd faces? In the nerd universe, did those things happen? Or was that all for show in this movie? I ask this because almost every single YouTuber that has gone out of their way to make a movie about themselves have a bunch of meta shit in it that breaks the universe of their shows. The AVGN videos are a work of fiction. Part of why they are so revered and interesting is because they aren't actually a guy reviewing video games. It's a character that James has created reviewing video games. So, were the AVGN videos real in this movie, or is it just the shadow of something even more real? Do we even know who the nerd is as a character at this point? I really feel like I shouldn't have to be asking these really metatextual questions within the first 5 minutes of the fucking angry video game nerd movie. Think I'm nitpicking? Well, I'm not done. Next, the nerd and Cooper arrive at their job working at Game Cops. So, let me stop right now. What have we established in this film thus far? And what is to be established time and time again throughout this whole fucking film? The nerd is an ultra popular internet celebrity that everybody adores, that companies are trying to get a hold of to more than likely pay him to endorse their shit. So, I'm supposed to believe that this guy exists while at the same time believing that he works a fucking minimum wage retail job at GameStop? What am I? A shit pickle munching, rolling, rocking owl turd? This makes no sense. He should be making mad bank off of his videos. But I guess in this universe he doesn't? It's never really explained, to be honest. Not even a throwaway line about how he makes these videos as a public service or something at the very least. That could have more than explained it and said something about the nerd as a character, that he makes these videos just as a public service and never has made any money off of it, even if the real life James has. Instead, they say nothing. No one who was writing the script said anything. Nobody else who read the script said anything. Nobody who was editing the film thought to say anything. No one apparently even thought it was an issue or saying anything, and then it shipped that way.
What a piece of shit.
Anyway, Cooper makes some creepy comments about watching the nerd's emails, begging him, much like everyone else in this movie, to review the infamous E.T. game, which he always declines because he hates it just that much. Cooper also asks if the nerd has watched his videos yet.
Have you watched my videos yet?
No, what is it, Super Video Dude?
No, man, it's Super Rad Video Game Dude.
But seriously, who the fuck is Cooper? Like, actually, who is he? He was never in any of the AVGN videos. He helps the nerd with video production, works the same job as him at the same hours, drives the nerd to work, is an obsessive fan of the nerd, and even tries his hand at making his own videos, which the movie takes careful steps to make sure you know are fucking dog shit, and that nobody likes Cooper's dog shit videos. I'm beginning to wonder if Cooper is a stand-in for James' audience, this annoying fucking leech that's always in his life, but ultimately seems to depend upon? Maybe that's a little bit too mean to assume, but my goodness, the metaphor writes itself. Either that or James wanted the nerd to have a sidekick type character that he could maybe mentor. I actually don't mind this idea. In fact, it could have been really funny. Imagine if the nerd was actually like how he is in his videos. A pessimistic, angry, violent fucker who likes to drink beer, swear, and gets into fights. He could have had a character that was way more optimistic. He always sees the good in everything, even shitty games. He even has the audacity to prefer a nice bottle of wine over that green bottled beer. If these two had to work together towards some common goal, which the nerd begrudgingly has to do, it could have at least made for a nice dynamic. Instead, we have Cooper. He exists almost exclusively to make the nerd seem more cool. And I may be jumping the shark a bit here, but the last thing this movie needs is another reminder of just how cool and funny and well-loved the nerd is. In the same scene, we see a kid and a cameo from Black Nerd Comedy, both of which know who the nerd is. We also see a strange dynamic where the nerd gets called into his boss's office to get yelled at and patronized.
What do you want?
You called me here.
All right, Herb. I just wanted to tell you there's gonna be a couple of changes. A shipment of War Duty 3000. Do you think we should put it in the front display?
I don't think that's a good idea.
Bullshit!
Huh. That guy sure was mad and put the nerd in his place. That guy must be a villain or something. Oh wait, that's right, he's in this one scene and never again. So there was no point to that scene, besides having, admittingly, some of the almost funniest bits of anger in the whole movie. Okay, moving forward, we have Black Nerd Comedy relay to the nerd the same story we heard at the start of the film, before the whole store starts chanting to the nerd to review E.T. Every single person knows who the nerd is in this store apparently, and also all wants him to review the same fucking game. Hell, I almost take back the self-masturbatory comment because this shit seems more like a bizarre Twilight Zone episode. Speeding up a bit, we get a dumb interaction between the nerd and Cooper about whether the ET landfill is true or not. Another fucking scene where the nerd is instantly recognized by everyone at a local bar, by the way, that the nerd has never even gone into before. He even writes his autograph for someone as badass triumphant music plays in the background. Could this get any more ridiculous?
You the nerd?
Yeah.
Oh my god! This is so cool!
Oh, come on now! I get that this is played for laughs, and this scene is weirdly what drew the popularity thing over that line of so absurd that it was obviously done on purpose. However, it is all the same still a really silly, even bad look to make a movie for what is all intents and purposes your self-insert character and have literally everyone fawning over him, even if the intent was to be comical, especially given the meta-narrative of this film. I mean, if the nerd was normally a really narcissistic character in the videos, this would kinda be funny that real life reflects his own fantasy. It just feels very off for everyone to be reacting this way to him. Cooper then cucks the nerd.
Yeah.
The woman goes and shows the autograph to her friends, remarking,
Never taking a shower again.
I seriously can't take this fucking movie. We then see Cooper humping the table, only for this line.
Always remember the golden rule. Nerds before birds, right?
Is this even the same character by this point? I guess he never really commented much about, well, his fucking sex life. But I don't know why that is such a point of interest in this film anyway. It's like they felt the nerd wasn't nerdy enough and needed to have more nerdy attributes, like never getting the girl or being an outcast. Except for the fact that everyone treats the nerd like a fucking king, so even that addition is made moot? Anyway, the nerd then gets introduced to Mandy, that representative from Cockburn Inc. at the beginning of the film. She's here to talk about how brilliant the nerd's videos are, because of course she is, and to show the nerd the demo of ET2, which gets the nerd so sick that he projectile vomits all over her and the computer.
So what do you think about that, nerd?
The nerd is mad that Cooper tried to set him up to work at Cockburn Inc., and he goes to bed that night only to be submitted to a nightmare. A flashback to the nerd's childhood on what is most likely Christmas Eve, opening his present to find E.T. within. This is meant to be a character-defining moment for the nerd, why he refuses to play that game, though almost every other game he has reviewed up to this point has had a similar story. He played the game as a kid, he hated it then, and now he's taking revenge and bitching about them now. At least that was the in-universe reason why he was reviewing games, so I sort of feel like there could have been a better reason for him not wanting to play E.T. Something more unique. The nerd then falls up and down in the infamous pits that are found in the E.T. game, only to wake up in a cold sweat, which then is revealed to be yet another nightmare, which admittingly does lead to a pretty funny payoff joke.
Even my dreams are low budget.
The nerd then finds himself inside an AVGN theme park, all about E.T., I guess. Then all of these devoted fans turn into zombies chasing after the nerd, and yeah, the whole sequence has some pretty good cinematography and is one of the more interesting bits of the movie, probably because James is much more comfortable in horror stuff. However, as far as getting some insight into why the nerd not only won't play this game, but also doesn't want anyone else to play it, this scene does nothing narratively. The only thing narratively that this scene kind of implies is that nerd fans are mindless zombies that, without his guidance, will just bring about their own ruin. Yikes. Like, here's a dumb idea. We have a similar setup with him playing the game on Christmas Eve. He's really disappointed and gets upset with it after playing it just for a little while, and then throws his controller across the room. But then, the game starts glitching out and acting almost supernatural. This causes him to stare at it and try to turn it off, but something prevents him from doing it. He stares into the abyss of the E.T. Atari game. Before the TV explodes, the young nerd flying backwards, his eyes damaged. He hears an ominous voice through the darkness, coming from the black abyss left where the TV screen once was. Suddenly, the nerd wakes up, panicked, and then slowly puts his glasses on. A little tweak like this would not only add to the mystic nature of the game in the universe, but metaphorically, the game damaging his eyes and being the reason he has to wear eyeglasses would be a powerful character moment and give us reason to why he's so passionate about it, since it could be seen as a game so bad that it's what turned him down this road of life, forever stuck in the abyss of his childhood hatred ever since. Similar to how E.T. in that game can never escape the pits. Is this idea kind of corny and dumb? Yeah, but this is the AVGN movie, not classic literature. Plus, you could still have that classic Cinemassacre cheese with his eyes being all damaged in a dumb and dramatic way, but he only needs glasses to repair them. So it's dumb while also functioning as a good character moment with no dialogue. The metaphor for the nerd being stuck in an abyss of anger and not wanting others to fall into the same pits he finds himself in is an easy one to make. But I guess having the zombie nightmare scene is more important? Moving ahead, the nerd jumps onto his computer to get on an online MMO with Cooper, which, by the way, Cooper's dialogue.
Come on, they nerfed PvP.
Nerfed the PvP? What? Well, anyway, even if it doesn't make a ton of sense, there is a pretty cool back and forth between the nerd and Cooper here. This gag being that the game looks super new and next gen on Cooper's iMac, while it looks like a retro game on the nerd's computer. The nerd decides that the best way to stop this whole E.T. thing is to prove that the story of the E.T. landfill is a hoax. He gets Cooper to agree to help him with the deal that if he does find any cartridges down there, he will have to review the game. He'll play every single one of them. Cooper calls Mandy back to get the help from Cockburn Inc. to excavate the land, I guess, raising the stakes for if they do find them, the nerd will also be endorsing that shitty company and their shitty game. We then get this exchange.
You game review? I didn't agree to this. I also really don't like the idea of bringing this girl with us.
To which Cooper responds,
Relax, no, she's our producer. And she's not a girl, she's a gamer.
What? What? Oh, I think we're going to need a commercial break after that one. Now, where were we? Oh yes, with the stage is all set, we are now transitioning into the road trip part of the film. The nerd, Cooper, and Mandy hang out for a bit, and at some point I sort of realize something. Cooper is an insipid joke that fails at almost everything he does. Mandy is a haha quirky girl who the other two judge constantly, and the nerd is, I guess, the everyman now in this world of weird, obsessive, incompetent turnips. He has his quirks, like having his hatred of the E.T. game or being behind the times on everything, I guess, but that part of his character is never really explored. Now, some of you might wonder why that's necessary. After all, we never really delved in deep with the whats and the whys with the nerd the whole time in his videos. Well, my answer why it's necessary is because this is a 2-hour film, not a 20-minute YouTube video. What works in one medium or format doesn't often work the same way in another, but even still, from the pitch about this film being the nerd going outside of his room, his show, so to speak, like Wayne's World, you would expect a strange world, yes, given the strange reality of the nerd episodes, but I would have never imagined the nerd as an everyman by that pitch. If anything, I would have thought he would stand out, have an anti-hero sort of presence, but the problem is that every other character is so over the top and silly that by comparison, the nerd just sort of gets swallowed up by it all, making him the one relatable piece in this strange world. While we're on the topic of characters though, why didn't Mike Matei or Kyle Justin end up in this film? I mean, they do get a cameo a little later in the film for like 10 seconds if that, but with Kyle Justin actually being a character in the nerd lore, the behind the couch guy, I sort of feel like it's lost potential not having him be on the road trip. Like maybe he won't come along on this road trip without his couch, and maybe he plays them songs along their way to the desert. Maybe he would end up using his guitar in some cool battle scene later on. That could have been kind of cool. And while Mike Matei is a bothersome bloke, I won't deny that he is an important piece to the AVGN show, and not having him be a part of any of it, not even playing one of the bad guys, seems like a real missed opportunity. Hell, there could have even been a gag of Bugs Bunny or Spider-Man coming back for a little bit, but now they're the copyright-free editions working for the greater evil bad guy or some shit. Rugs Rabbit and Roachman, something like that. Stuff that would, you know, connect it with the videos, make it feel like I'm watching an AVGN movie and not some random sci-fi channel movie that happens to have the nerd in it. Speaking of bad guys, the main ones are introduced by this point once the nerd gets to the landfill. The big villain of the AVGN movie is some random general named Dark Onward, who has parts of his body get blown off during the course of the film as a running gag, and yeah, that's it. He has some other government henchmen, his main right-hand woman being McButter.
Second thought.
Sir?
I think I should supervise this mission personally.
I don't think that'll be necessary, General. You're needed for more. Vital. Thanks, sir.
I insist. Something important's about to blow up. I want to be there.
Yes, sir.
Okay. There is another villain, I guess, introduced by Cooper when he's going on a long rant about being a flat earther or something. Anyway, he eventually notes the existence of a cybernetic death god by the name of Death Moxis. This god lives under Mount Fuji, and he's the one who created God and Satan with the power to end all life as we know it with the turn of his satellite on his head, which would cause the disappearance of every universe in the Megaverse and in the Ultraverse forever, with the only thing left being a bologna sandwich. Which I'll admit gets one good line out of the nerd.
That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard.
Ask for Death Moxis. Well, James really wanted a kaiju in his film. I can't say I blame him, but we'll get to that in a moment. But it is one of the cooler ideas created by this movie. Our villains interrogate the nerd crew for no real reason, really, besides being gung-ho and bored, I suppose, and we get this terrible line out of McButter.
All right, honey, don't get your panties in a wad. I'm not wearing any panties.
Oh, I'm starting to get tired, guys. Well, through a really stupid chain of events, Dark Onward gets one of his arms blown off.
Oh my god, where's my fucking arm?
Andy gets the car started, and then a car chase ensues with a bunch of random jokes that are kind of clearly written bad on purpose, I think.
What the hell is that?
Fruit, sir!
My god, did you see the size of those melons? Take a note, Big Butter.
Parts of this movie were made to be a low budget or stupid on purpose, the special effects in some scenes being the clear examples. But when it comes to the writing, it kind of all feels bad. Even the stuff I think was supposed to not be bad. See, that's the issue of trying to write bad shit. It gets hard to tell what you were doing on purpose and what you did by accident. So the nerd and crew decided to go to Howard Scott Warshaw, the creator of the OG ET game, to get right to the source of the game, I guess to prove it was not in the landfill or something. I'm kind of losing track. And Warshaw's house just so happens to be right by the landfill and a few minutes away from where they're driving. I guess this next chain of events is some of the most contrived fucking stupid parts of the movie. I'm gonna warn you. So it actually turns out the house that they think is Howard Scott Warshaw's house is actually the hiding place of this man named Dr. Zandor, who was running away from the government due to a secret about the ET game involving aliens. And somehow they find this place. The nerd does, or maybe Cooper knew where it was, but the government has never found this man that they are looking for, even though he is literally within their vicinity in the same fucking desert, which, by the way, they apparently have cameras everywhere in this desert, and it doesn't take much for them to attack, as shown off when the nerd and them just had to literally drive up to the desert for them to get attacked. Okay. Also, where was the mix-up? Did Howard Scott Warshaw used to live here? How was Cooper able to find this place? Like, on the map? Does the government not have a map? Anyway, this Dr. Zandor character is sort of used as an exposition dump. He's an ex-Area 51 employee who was working on rebuilding the Roswell UFO, decided he didn't want to anymore due to him believing the world wasn't ready for that sort of power, so he quit, and couldn't find work, so he got revenge on Area 51 and the government by helping Warshaw when he was making the ET game, and since he only had 5 weeks to finish that said ET game, and when Dr. Zandor helped Warshaw make the game, it ended up having a perfect blueprint for Area 51's base. So then it was the government that recalled all the ET games and had them put into the landfill. Oh, and also Dr. Zandor stole the original Roswell spaceship parts and replaced it with tinfoil. And it turns out he didn't do all this for revenge, but also to help the alien from the spacecraft from Roswell, who I guess he had become friends with during his time working at Area 51. And he tells these three characters all of this after having met them for less than 2 minutes. Did you catch all that? Good, because that's what the rest of the movie is actually about for the next fucking hour. I'll give the movie this. This plotline is probably the most interesting twist it has to offer, and is a pretty clever way of trying to make the ET game something grander than just a simple, shitty Atari game. I do think the execution of revealing all of this shit all at once, however, is pretty bad. I feel like half of this information could have been given out now, and then maybe more of it could have been revealed when the nerd is eventually captured by Dark Onward or something, just to break it up a bit. Though it does call into question how every single cartridge as a piece of the UFO is even feasibly possible, and why the government hasn't gone after the copies people already own, or why it's not a super rare game if the government wants it gone, or for that matter if the government wanted them gone so long but no one except this dude even knew or thought it was a map of Area 51, why it was even worth throwing away. Regardless though, the nerd and his lot decide to stay at Dr. Xandor's that night. The government somehow having found their way to Xandor's, even though they had been looking for Xandor for years, they somehow have a camera inside his house to be able to see him. I mean, did no one else, when they were writing the script, going over the script, reading from the script, did no one think that this sounded kind of dumb? That the government's been looking for this guy who has like government secrets and shit like that, and he's like right next to them, and they've never fucking found him until now? And somehow Cooper found them before then by accident? Cause he was on a fucking map? What? What follows is one of the most infamous scenes from the film, where the nerd and Mandy have a moment together, where they play video games and it sounds like they're having raging hard nerd sex. It is surprisingly awkward.
Oh my god, it's so hard! Oh shit! Faster! Come on, faster!
Which, if was the intention, well done I suppose.
It looks like
You're a
I
cheater.
won. You cheated.
Skipping ahead, Mandy through some dumb events gets apprehended by McButter and her henchmen. And trust me, this will lead to a B-plot that is one of the worst, most unfunny, boring parts of the entire movie.
Take me to Dr. Louis Xander.
What a piece of shit.
Then Cooper and the nerd argue about if they should abandon Mandy or not, and if she is a girl or a gamer, repeating the same stupid fucking nerds before a bird thing.
Producer? I thought she's a gamer, not a girl.
I think she's a secret agent.
Rupert, there's no reason for acting this way.
You're the one who's acting all weird. You get a little girlfriend all of a sudden. Oh, fuck off. Don't break the code. Nerds before birds.
God, why don't you just put that on a t-shirt already? Then Cooper and the nerd find out she's been kidnapped and that her big glasses were fake and that she was only pretending to be a gamer, leading to, I'm gonna admit, one of the only jokes I actually laughed at in the movie.
I feel like such a fool. The moment you share your joystick with a girl, they break it.
Too bad this once-in-a-lifetime kind of funny joke is followed up by Mandy driving McButter and her troops all around to stall them away from Xandor's house.
Oh, what the fuck?
A few questions. 1. Why is she the one driving? 2. Why haven't they taken more extreme measures to make her take them there by this point? 3. If they had actual camera footage of them from before and could hear them, wouldn't they already know where Xandor is? 4. How far away did this bitch run from the house? Surely it couldn't have been that far. Wouldn't McButter figure that Xandor's house must be close by? 5. Why am I even trying to make sense of this shit anymore? Also, Mandy and McButter, especially McButter, are just awful here. I know that the script isn't much to work with, and some of these takes clearly needed another take, like how McButter has a really delayed response to the army dudes wanting ice cream.
Since we're here and all, you think Fred and I could get some ice cream?
Don't even think about.
Look, it may be choppy, but even I can try and make this fit better.
Since we're here and all, you think?
Don't even think about it.
See? Also, why is there this long pause after that? What was even the point of this scene? It's so badly edited together. Why didn't they just cut it out? What were they thinking? So now there's a convention that literally happened overnight in the desert, full of crazed AVGN fans. Dr. Xandor says something about a prophecy being fulfilled or some shit.
Prophecy is almost fulfilled.
which is one of the plot lines that just is never talked about ever again. It's never even really brought up by the nerd at all, not even as a joke, so I don't know if it was just forgotten or if it was just a joke that wasn't funny.
I'm telling you, Mandy, you've been running me ragged all day long.
Howdy. Mind grabbing a family photo?
No. Come on, right here.
No,
That's good. Everybody get in the picture. It's gonna be cute.
A little later, we do get a cool couple-second cameo of Mike Matei and Kyle Justin, with a little song from Kyle as droves of nerd fans come in to sit out in the middle of the desert to play E.T. 2, I guess. It's really amazing just how dumb all the nerd fans are in this movie. Like, I almost understand why the nerd feels the need to protect them to such a crazy degree. These insipid man-children would have been dead long ago without their rolling rock guzzling god. We do get a few more scenes of Mandy taking McButter all over the place, including Las Vegas. Isn't that funny? Boy howdy, these sure are a bunch of quirky characters that totally justify making jarring cuts from the main plot just to see how funny and quirky they are. We totally couldn't have cut all of this shit out and made a much better paced film because it was just too funny. Moving on, the nerd lies to his fans about the E.T. games not being there in an attempt to save their stupid lives. All of them being retarded little lemmings, they of course believe him.
This game is bullshit, and the legend behind it is a total lie. It's all a myth. You can all go home now.
Oh man, the nerd just said this is bullshit.
Dude, when the nerd says something is bullshit, it's bullshit.
Makes you wonder why he didn't just make a video at the start of the movie saying that it was all bullshit if it was really just that easy. But uh-oh, Howard Scott Warshaw, the game designer of E.T., comes out of nowhere and tells the fans that the story of the landfill is in fact true. It ends up telling them the whole game being a map to Area 51 thing, much to the anger of Dark Onward, who is somehow watching all this and never even attempted to stop or kill this huge group of people chanting about E.T., I guess, despite the fact that he did that very thing for far less back at the beginning of this whole road trip thing when it was his nerding crew. In fact, if it wasn't for McButter, he was gonna blow them up with a missile. Surely, this whole tirade of people yelling and screaming at your base is much more of a reason to do something like that, right? Oh, and we can't forget that Howard Scott Warshaw has also seen the nerd's videos, because of course he has, and lectures the nerd about finding the truth and that the world would be a better place if everyone told the truth.
People like us, we don't cover things up. Wouldn't this be a better world if people told the truth? The truth, nerd. That is what you must find.
Is this a theme that the movie is trying to work in, maybe? Are we maybe developing towards?
I'm gonna break into Area 51.
Oh, okay, I guess we're off to the next thing then. Oh wait, first we gotta catch up with McButters and Mandy, cause the joke hasn't stopped being funny yet.
You're gonna be dead. Have faith, Butterface.
I will kill you, fat butt.
And she dropped her fucking gun too. How convenient. Where did the other two soldiers go, by the way? Well, it doesn't fucking matter, because between these clips, McButter has tied up Mandy and tries to use her as bait to stop the nerd from coming into Area 51. Even though it's, you know, Area 51? They could just shoot him if they see him on sight. Why are they even trying to bribe him? There's still 40 minutes of this thing left, good God. So the nerd refuses to take the bait.
You like her, don't you?
No.
Which would be really funny, but he has to be instructed to do it by Cooper.
It's a trap, nerd. Like I said, don't go. I'm not coming.
Dad, come up here and rescue me right now.
F you FBI bitch.
who the fuck even is this guy anymore? The nerd from the videos would have said that he isn't falling for that cliche movie bullshit, and probably would have told them to go fuck themselves. But remember, those videos are just videos in this movie's universe. This nerd guy might as well be some random fuck with an unfortunate case of constipation face. Let's hurry this shit up. So Dark Onward is mad that the diversion didn't work. His lackeys come and show him some AVGN videos, which they all of course love and laugh at, because the nerd is so funny in the fucking nerd movie. Then they see the super rad gamer, Cooper, and of course they hate him because Cooper is a failure at everything. He's just some fucking stupid loser that everyone just wishes would kill themselves, unlike the talented and always beloved nerd. You know, if Cooper is kind of inspired off of all the content creators that were inspired off of the nerd and just wanted to emulate him in some way or try to make their own content, seems the joke is on them, I guess. Bunch of fucking losers. So the nerd breaks into Area 51 by pretending to be an alien in a UFO.
Alright, one.
Then the nerd gets into a big scuffle with a couple of nurses. Finds out that Area 51 really is just like the ET game's level design. He gets captured again and has the controller strapped to his hands. Actually seems a little bit more like nerd stuff momentarily. We then get a scene between Dark Onward and the nerd. An attempt being made to connect the protagonist with the antagonist, since they both want the world to be rid of this game. A valiant effort, but it's sort of a bland way to connect them.
You hate this game, don't you? You see, we're not so different, you and I. We stand for the same thing.
But before we let that develop much more, we need another scene with McButter and Mandy with some of the most 7th grade cringy writing I have ever fucking seen.
I told you, Butch Barbie. I know nothing.
Look, I'm not one to care about shit like this. Hell, I actually don't care about shit like this. But for the sake of pointing it out, it's clear James nor Kevin knew how to write female characters whatsoever. We skip back and forth between the two villains talking to our protagonists, which only serves to take whatever interesting dynamic or tension this scene between the nerd and Dark Onward totally away with these pointless cuts to McButter and Mandy characters. They don't even have a reason to be in this plot anymore at this point. Unless you have them come back to Area 51 and try to reintegrate them into the main fucking plot, you're just making a badly paced film even worse with their inclusion. Well, past the useless shit, Dark Onward wants the nerd to convince his loyal fans to send all their ET game carts to him. And I guess McButter is trying to convince Mandy to help them in recovering the carts as well.
You give us the old games, and we'll make sure that this new game is a success beyond your wildest dreams.
But how would she or her company go about... You know what, never mind. So the nerd refuses to help Dark Onward because I guess he has to show the world the truth or something like that, I don't know. Dark Onward decides that he's going to exploit the nerd's greatest weakness then, the love for his fans, and blow them all up. The nerd stops this, however, by telling Onward that Xandor is in that crowd and that he's the only one who knows where the UFO space medal is. Cooper somehow gets the ET alien to escape from its prison in Area 51 through the ET game. Again, don't question it, I don't know how he did that. And Dark Onward decides then he's gonna blow up Mount Fuji cause it represents Atari, I guess? Which leads to the awakening of the Death Moxis, as foreshadowed by Cooper earlier. Oh, and the alien helps the nerd break loose from his binds. They get chased by cardboard robots, and in the process, Dark Onward loses his other arm to a closing door. If you couldn't tell, this part of the movie is what made up most of the trailers, and what made the movie actually look kind of fun from those trailers alone, where you can see a ton of practical special effects on display, actual goofy effects and character designs. You can actually actually tell was made to look silly on purpose. And for a moment, the movie almost comes close to being that charming indie film that I really wish it was. Even the set designs and general appearance of this part of the movie is a lot better than everything we've seen before. It is not exactly nerd type stuff, but it definitely feels more like a movie, I guess, versus the odd, slow, and just frankly boring pacing we've had up until this point. So, the finale. We see the nerd and the alien take off in a jet in their escape from Area 51, and we end up getting one of the few charming nerd callbacks.
Either we refuel or we land this thing.
Well, I don't even drive a car, so how am I supposed to do this?
You wanna know what happened to me last time I tried?
Well, you ever seen me play Top Gun?
Anywho, Death Moxus starts wreaking havoc around Japan. The alien tells the nerd that the whole world is just a video game, a game that he made, and he came down to try and settle the game down since we invented the nuclear bomb. So on top of that, Death Moxus is the alien's dad, and if he finds out that shit's as bad as it is, he's gonna turn the satellite dish on his head and erase all of existence. So Dark Onward tries to find Dr. Xandor and the crowd of AVGN fans for hours, I guess. Death Moxus starts tearing random shit up around the world. Nerd tries his best to land the plane, and then Mandy tells McButter to untie her so that they can...
Okay, bitch. Come over here and untie me. Let's see who can fuck up who.
Which she actually does for some reason. And then they both start fighting, and Matey says what is probably the worst fucking line in the whole movie.
Now, I thought I could get through this without objectifying myself in a sexy catfight. But it looks like that's impossible now.
I have watched this movie 3 times in a row, watching it, rewatching it and taking notes, rewatching it for the sake of getting this script all together. And this line, this one right here, is the one that breaks me every single fucking time.
It's a pile of fucking shit!
So the Death Moxus special effects and stuff are pretty cool though. You might even call it a highlight of the film, but I digress. The nerd does not end up landing the plane, and instead ejects along with the alien right before getting caught again, along with Dr. Xandor. Death Moxus eventually reaches the Eiffel Tower thing that McButter and Matey are still fighting on, all the way into the night now, only for McButter to finally meet her end via an in-joke falling down and turning invisible gag. Thank God for that. But now Death Moxus has Cooper in his vacuum thing, and Matey is in his chick magnet. Whatever will they do? Well, luckily for them, all the ET games ever made come together, randomly, to utilize each of their parts of the spaceship to finally put it back together. Also, we have a Nostalgia Critic cameo. And what does he do for the short time he's on screen? Ah yes, the sound of a hyena being violently violated anally by an elephant. That's our critic. Anyhow, the ship is back together, so the nerd flies up into the spaceship with the alien, and Dark Onward presses onward through the dark to take down the ship once and for all, only to fall into a pit and die. Well, that was pointless. Is his name Dark Onward because he dies going onward in the dark? I mean, I thought it was a weird name, but could it actually be that? Whatever. He's dead. Kind of anticlimactic though, I must admit. But maybe they're just saving the real battle for the finale with Death Moxus. I mean, the nerd has fought the devil and evil robots and all sorts of random things in the past. I mean, surely this is gonna be a pretty good battle. Maybe the UFO has like a transforming stage that he turns into a giant mech and we have a big fat cool kaiju battle. Or maybe they...
Imagine if you were Death Moxus and knew everything there was to know. And if there's one thing that maybe you haven't thought of in a while, one thing that nobody could ever learn, one indescribable, far out, unimaginable, fucked up enigma of nature, way outside the boundaries of existence. Maybe if I could direct his attention to that, he'll go away.
Oh, so they have to come up with some cool idea that will interest him. Unconventional, not as cool as the kaiju battle idea, but that could lead into a great joke and punchline. I wonder what thing they will come up with. What could possibly interest this Lovecraftian being that would distract him from his reign of destruction?
Whoa. Now that's some heavy-handed symbolism.
Okay, for what though? These are all people he doesn't like? Oh, so they don't actually have to come up with or explain what it is that got him interested. They just shoot a laser at a big, easy target, and then he magically now has something new that interests him now. So, in other words, you took something that could have been really cool and epic, like a mech battle, and you didn't do that. And then you introduced something that could have been kind of funny and clever, and you did nothing with it. You instead wasted everyone's time with fucking nonsense. Wow, what a perfect fucking analogy for this whole boring, worthless, bad movie. Going back to the first time me and my brother had ever watched this film, the movie that we had both waited so long to see had followed every step along the way to its worldwide release. I remember feeling some of the most conflicting emotions. On one hand, I think we both wanted to say that it was a great movie, that it was fun and full of all the stuff that James loves, like kaijus and aliens and horror, and we would point out the positives like the practical effects or something. Anything from us having to face the facts that we both thought the movie was, well, bad. I desperately didn't want to dislike the movie. Hell, looking at all the footage and behind the scenes stuff in the making of this video, the passion James had for this film at the time makes me feel really bad for saying that I disliked the film so much. So how did this happen? Why was the result of all this hard work this mess? Well, I believe there's a few reasons for that. Number 1, James' ambitions clearly didn't match his budget. $350,000 is a pretty decent crowdfunding budget for an indie film, you would think, right? And sure, but not if you're trying to make a special effects heavy pseudo-action film and film the majority of it in LA. James and co-writer Kevin wanted to create a movie just like all the big professional directors, which meant filming down in Hollywood. Only problem with that, filming there costs a lot of fucking money. Money that even James himself admits he wasn't aware of. It would have been far more practical for an AVGN movie to be something more downscaled, more down to earth, or at the very least filmed someplace else. But James seemed to have dreams of this movie launching his filming career to new heights, becoming the full-time director he had always dreamed of. But honestly, I just don't think that was ever going to happen with the AVGN movie, be it good or not. Which leads me to number 2. The movie misunderstood what made AVGN so iconic and engaging to begin with. Many would say the game reviews were the most iconic part of AVGN, which you would be partly correct, but the other, more important part of the nerd is how he reacts to things, how obsessed, angry, and ultimately trapped he is in this cycle of playing shitty games. Many might argue that that's not at all very deep, that it's just an online internet angry man after all. What's there to know? Well, that's just it. He is, in many ways, the original internet angry man, and I'm not sure that this was a character James or Kevin thought would translate well onto the big screen. Why else would they turn him into an everyman that everyone loves, and that cares for everyone deep down, and compared to all the weirdos of this world, isn't so bad and crazy after all? I feel like most people that had watched The Nerd back in the day would agree that if this character was thrown into the real world, he would stand out a bit, mostly in a negative way since he's an angry, obsessive drunk who yells about NES games. But in that there could have been real comedy, and something that ironically would have been much more interesting and relatable since he as a character would have been downplayed. He would have just been himself. I mean, hell, James cites Rocky as an inspiration for this film, and I feel like one of the key parts he's missing from Rocky is the fact that Rocky is an unusual character. We get to know him and really personally see his life, some of his dreams and ambitions, who he has a crush on, who he works for, all that sort of stuff. In other words, it's a much more personal, down-to-earth sort of movie with a big, bombastic finale. And I feel like if The Nerd was something a little bit more akin to that, I could see it work a lot better, especially with The Nerd being an outsider in the world of reality. But instead, The Nerd has changed into a disgruntled internet celebrity who cares too much about his fans, I guess. Woof. And finally, number 3. As I noted before, conceptually the film has issues with it being in the real world, and making all the past Nerd continuity confused at best, or just plain irrelevant to this movie at worst. And honestly, I think this movie didn't really need to exist, as it feels, at best, a slideshow of stuff James thinks is cool, and is at its worst, a boring slog with awful pacing, wooden characters, and a plot that besides a couple scenes, is mostly an E.T. urban legend movie that features The Nerd in it. I don't know how it's possible to make a movie that you know had so much passion and time put into it, was completely crowdfunded, and had no distributor interfering, and come out feeling like the same disappointing, throwaway kind of film that big studios always shit out of their asses when they are tasked with the opportunity of making a film based on a classic video game or anime IP. There are also many who have since came out who helped and worked on the film as extras, and while I won't hold their words as absolute truth, a common theme that can be found with most of the extras and people who tell their stories working on this film behind the scenes years later is that there seemed to be a real incompetence on set, notably with James falling into the background and co-writer, who ended up being more of a co-director, Kevin, taking over. There was supposedly a lot of arguments, mismanagement, and the budget being bled dry way too early. But again, take it all with a grain of salt, but given the final product, I certainly wouldn't be surprised by some of these claims. Now, some of you might rightfully point out that this film is a passion project, an independent film that is a marvel in its own right that it even exists today, which you would be right about. Don't let my criticism take away from the fact that this is a movie that was made by such a small group of people and it somehow pulled through. It's also the best YouTuber made movie, I think, because it's an actual movie with a cast, crew, script, professional score, etc. It's part of why talking about this movie has been difficult for me in writing this script. However, I don't think just because it's an independent film that it is suddenly unable to be criticized. And hell, as far as special effects, the score, and some of the sets, I think this movie can be very impressive at times, and you really do get that feeling that it is uniquely James Rolfe's style. I also acknowledge that he himself says he likes to make weird and over-the-top films, but also pay tribute to other genres, and you can really see that on full display here. All the same though, my primary problems with the film are really on the writing level, something that even the lowest budget indie film has the potential to get right, or even extremely right. Besides the core conceptual ideas in the film, and it just being a bad idea for an AVGN film in my opinion, conceptually, there is also objective writing flaws on display everywhere in this film. I'm not talking about little nitpicks or contrivances, I mean shit that would render the whole plot null and void. The biggest one being the crux for the whole movie, the nerd's entire motivation. If he didn't want to review E.T. and thought that the landfill story was bullshit, why didn't he just make a video saying just that? It would not only be in character, but it would be so much easier than him going on a wild goose chase with a company that he hates. We already know that it would work since he literally tells a flock of AVGN fans later on in the movie in the desert with no evidence to back up his claims that all of this landfill stuff is bullshit, and they believe him blindly. So why didn't he just make a video about it? Well, I know the answer, because then there would be no movie, and no adventure, nothing. It's objectively bad because it goes against the already well-established and continually shown reality of this film's universe. The nerd has a cult following that will listen to anything he says, so why doesn't he just fucking say something then? Is a plot hole that if remedied leaves you needing to rewrite the whole story, or at least rewriting why he ends up going on the adventure in the first place. And if the plot hole is that big, then your script is in need of a rework. Okay, but enough sour words. So I don't like the Nerd movie, and I feel like I've shared my reasons in a fairly detailed manner at this point. So what about everyone else? Well, at the time, the reviews and feelings seemed mixed when it first came out. There was a lot more positivity back then than there is now about the film, that's for sure, but most reviews amounted to, it's a kind of okay film, but it's only really worth it if you're an AVGN fan, and I can tell the passion that James put into it. That's the basic rundown of most reviews about that film during this time frame. Which is sad, by the way, because many of the changes to the Nerd almost feel like it was done to appeal to a larger audience outside of the fans. But nobody cared about some guy on the internet making angry game reviews, certainly not critics, who overall thought the movie was garbage. It's not like critics were ever going to understand what the movie was going for, but even as a longtime fan of AVGN and giving this movie many times to try to find enjoyment out of it, I can certainly say that I don't really get it either. I've also seen many fans come to terms with their feelings on this film over time, which many, like myself, really wanted to like the movie, almost feeling invested in wanting James to succeed, but with time, have only grown to dislike the movie more and more. Even the most die-hard AVGN fans will usually say, yeah, I like everything that James has done, maybe except the stupid movie. Which is a real fucking shame considering that is without a doubt James' most ambitious and biggest time-consuming project he's ever done. And of course, the movie does have its fans, and if you are one of them who genuinely enjoys this film for what it is, and somehow made it through this whole video with me shitting all over it, well, more power to ya. I'm glad you got something out of it that I didn't. Maybe you can even list some of the things that you really enjoy about the film down below in the comments. Trust me, I won't judge you. I like plenty of stuff that I know is dog shit too. I already shared some of the ideas in the overview, but if you were to ask me how would I have done this film differently, I would have done the following. Made it a film where it mostly takes place in one location, that being the nerd's home. Have it be a deep dive into the psychosis of the nerd, backstory, etc. I would have had the guitar guy be a part of it, probably Mike Matei playing some sort of asshole in the movie somewhere, and I would have had some sort of mystical force, Lovecraftian monster maybe, that takes control of the E.T. game, rather than the whole alien government plot. I also would have stayed true to the nerd's original character and had him be an asshole who was aware that he was in a movie, breaking the fourth wall from time to time. But all the same, I also would have had him go through some sort of arc by the end of the movie, something that maybe he can never come back from afterward. and this one may be controversial, but the movie probably would have been the finale for the AVGN show, or at least as it was then, because I feel like in order to make some sort of emotional impact, it would be important that the nerd actually learns something about himself and moves forward from it, which would probably involve stop obsessing over shitty ass fucking games. Or at least have something happen that would change the dynamic of the show and the character forever after. So basically, it would be a totally different movie in all fairness. James is a really creative and really smart guy. I think he has a lot of talent and has expressed and shown that off in many fashions. It's just a real shame that the biggest, most expensive project that he ever made happened to be a flop. If for some strange reason you've gotten the impression that I don't like James or something like that from this video, please refer to the other 2 videos I've made about James and the Angry Video Game Nerd and everything else he's done, because I really like the guy. I like everything he's done, almost anyway, but everyone makes mistakes, everyone makes fuck-ups, it's just who we are as a human race. Regardless though, this film's release would be a turning point for James, for AVGN, and for all the fans who watched it. If you hadn't guessed by now, with all the comments we showcased from James, the larger-than-life expectations and goals James had planned for this film and his career, you might start to understand that James didn't plan on doing this AVGN show forever. In fact, I have no doubt in my mind, had all James' dreams had come true, that this movie really did somehow launch his career, he would have said goodbye to the AVGN in a heartbeat. The movie being a fitting send-off in his mind to the show, maybe one more video just for extra finality, and never looked back. And no one would have blamed him, considering that his biggest ultimate dream had finally come true and he would have been able to make big Hollywood movies at last. Lest we forget that this whole show was supposed to be just a one-time thing, a little shitpost. A quick joke that was pushed by Mike Matei into the phenomenon that it eventually became. James used his newfound fame to showcase his past work and find ways to talk about movies, which were always more his real passion, while still doing The Nerd since it was his most popular series. That's not to say that I think James didn't like making the Nerd episodes. Far from it, in fact. If anything, this whole retrospective has really shown off how James used the series as a really big creative outlet, utilizing all his skills that he had learned about film up to that point to make, without a doubt, one of the most iconic series on the internet ever. I just don't think he ever planned on having it last forever. Hell, certainly not this long. I mean, stop and imagine yourself in his shoes for a moment. Imagine you have this dream to be something big, to share big creative stories around the world, or create something you always wanted to make. But the thing that you're most well known for online is a random meme series you made as a joke. The random meme series is fun to make, but you do have bigger goals, bigger aspirations. Now imagine that the one time you get the chance to actually do that, the chance to make a bigger thing, hell, you're even using your meme series as your launching point, you fail. Doesn't live up to all the dreams that you had. And while maybe it had some moderate success among some of your fans, that's all it really did at the end of the day. And so now you're stuck back to making that meme series again. And if you want to remain relevant, you'll keep making that meme series. And after all, it's more than just your relevancy. It's now your form of income for your family. Your newborn child depends on this meme series. Reality starts setting in and all your biggest dreams may never come true, or at least are very, very far off, farther off than you ever thought that they would be. And so, you go back to making that meme series because you don't have time to fuck around anymore. So, what would the future of the AVGN series hold, and where do we find it today? Has James as a creator evolved more over time? Will he ever get another chance to create a big movie again? Well, find out in the grand finale to this AVGN retrospective, AVGN, The Age of Screenwave.